Good day. Welcome to this course, Emergency and Disaster Management. For Module 1, we'll be looking at Introduction to Disaster Science and Prevention. By way of module objectives, by the end of this module, you'll be able to distinguish and define between hazards, risk, disasters to accurately assess environmental threats. You'll be able to apply the disaster management circle to real world scenarios, focusing on mitigations and preparedness. You'll be able to identify man made disaster triggers and implement prevention strategies such as industrial safety audits and risk assessment. You'll also be able to differentiate stakeholder roles using the four pillar responsibility framework. You also be able to develop a proactive safety mindset essential for a professional career in emergency management. By way of introduction, emergency and disaster management is a multidisciplinary field dedicated to protecting lives, properties, and the environment from the effect of natural and man made hazards. This module provides a foundational understanding of how disasters are categorized and the critical shift from reactive response to proactive prevention. By mastering the core principles of disaster science, individuals and organizations can significantly reduce their vulnerability. This module introduces the essential four pillar responsibility framework, which outlines the specific duties of individuals, governments, hospitals, and businesses in the face of crisis. In this module, we explore the life cycles of a disaster and strategic measures to required to mitigate the risk before they escalate into catastrophes. This foundation is necessary for mastering more complex features of the field and progressing to the tactical and legal modules later in the course. Now let's have an overview of emergency and disaster management. By definition, emergency and disaster management is a comprehensive field that integrates various disciplines focusing on preparedness, response, recovery, and risk reduction from natural and man made hazards. The key goal here is to minimize the impacts of disasters by transitioning from reactive responses to proactive prevention, fostering resilience in communities and organizations. Why this course matters is that it gives, when you understand this course, understanding this course is essential because it enables societies to reduce vulnerability to disasters, protect lives and properties, and maintain stability in the aftermath. Now, the key framework here is the four pillar responsibility, which outlines how different sectors of the society, that is, individuals, government, businesses, and hospitals, play distinct roles during a disaster response. Now, let's look at these three terms: hazard, risk, and disasters. A hazard is a potential threat or condition that could cause harm. Hazards are present but may not always result in disaster, e.g., a wet floor is an hazard, but it may not always result in disaster, it's just there. A risk is the likelihood of an hazard causing harm. It combines probability and potential impact. So where there's a wet floor and there's something else, and there's probability that that wet floor will make somebody fall down, that's a risk. So the risk is high. So because of that hazard, it depends on the intensity of that hazard that will make the risk high or low. And what about a disaster? What is a disaster? A disaster is when an hazard effects overwhelm a community's ability to respond effectively, causing widespread disruption. This is when disaster happens. Now let's look at hazard examples. We have natural hazards and we have technological hazards. Now for natural hazards, we have earthquakes, we have tsunamis and floods. While for technological, we have industrial accidents, chemical spills, we have nuclear meltdowns. Then we also have biological hazards such as pathogens, viruses, and food contamination. Now, the importance: identifying and cataloging hazards is the first step in any safety or emergency management framework. Now, what is risk? By definition, risk is the calculated measure combining the likelihood of an hazard and its potential impact on the community. I already explained that before. So, this is the likelihood that a hazard will occur. Now, we also have what they call risk assessment and risk mitigation. Assessment is in evaluating the probability of hazards and their consequences. While for mitigation, it is taking proactive measures to reduce the risk through planning and protective measures. Now, let's look at disaster. By definition, a disaster occurs when the impact of a hazard exceeds the community's resources to respond. When it happens and the community cannot effectively and efficiently respond to the disaster given their resources, it's said that an hazard has occurred. What are some of the key factors of an hazard or of a disaster rather? The scale of event, vulnerability of the community, and there's resource overload. An example is an earthquake hitting a city, overwhelming local system and response efforts. You can see these are examples of natural disasters. Now, we also have what they call the disaster management circle. There are different phases of management cycle, ranging from mitigation to recovery. Now, mitigation, these are long-term actions to reduce the risk. While preparedness, are plans and readiness for disasters. Response is immediate actions to address the disaster that has already happened. While recovery is long-term effort to restore stability and improve resilience. Now let's look at mitigation, reducing long-term risk. The goal of mitigation is to prevent hazards from turning into disasters or reduce their severity. So it's to prevent hazard from turning into disaster or to reduce their severity. Now, what are some of the structural measures of an hazard? We have levees, we have dams, we have earthquake resistant buildings. What are some of the non-structural that has nothing to do with building? We have zoning laws, we have public education, we have early warning systems. Now, what about preparedness? This is getting ready for the inevitable. The objective is to ensure readiness for when disaster occurs. What are some of the key elements? Planning, training, resource stockpiling, and public education, teaching people before it happens. And what about response? Response is immediate action to disaster. The objective is to save lives, to reduce injuries, and to prevent further damage. Now, in the key activities here is that they should search and rescue, medical assistance, shelter, food and provision, emergency communication. Now, what about recovery? Recovery is rebuilding and restoring. The goal is to return back to normalcy and to enhance future resilience. Activities carried here: infrastructural restoration, economic revitalization, and psychological support to victims. Now, how do you prevent man made disasters? The focus here is to prevent accidents from industrial systems and human error. The strategy that should be employed is they should carry out risk assessment. I already explained what risk assessment is before. Risk assessment is checking for systems to evaluate the risk. Then you also carry out industry safety audits, checking regularly for industry safety. Then you also have industrial environmental engineering. Now, what is the four pillar responsibility framework? We have four. We have individuals, governments, hospitals, and businesses. Now, for individuals, people should be aware of their personal role in disaster preparedness and responses. This could include taking personal safety measures, being informed, and helping within their communities. For government have the responsibility to ensure public safety, create disaster preparedness plans, allocate resources, and manage emergency services during disasters. For hospitals play a vital role in disaster responses by providing medical care, supporting emergency response teams, and maintaining healthcare infrastructure during crisis. For businesses contribute by maintaining continuity plans, providing essential goods and services, and supporting community recovery efforts after disasters. The framework emphasizes the importance of coordinated active actions across all sectors to ensure an effective response to disaster. By aligning resources, strategies, and effort, these sectors can collectively manage and mitigate disaster impacts, ensuring more comprehensive and efficient disaster response. By way of conclusion, in this module, we have covered the essential foundation of disaster science and the vital importance of prevention. By mastering these fundamentals, you can confidently begin to work within the field of emergency and disaster management. We explored how to identify hazards, disaster management circle, and the four pillar responsibility framework. We also discussed the importance of proactive industry safety and stakeholder coordination. These skills provide a strong base for performing more complex tasks like tactical combat skills and legal analysis in the subsequent module. Now, there's an assessment session where you have to answer 15 multiple choice questions to assess your understanding of this, and you also have to give a report that apply to the real world scenario. That will be all for this module. I'll see you in module 2.